Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the vlog. In honor of the NFL season kicking off, and more importantly, fantasy football season kicking off, which I am a champion of, I put together a list of some of my biggest punts and scores of the vlog so far, including some never-before-seen hands. So I hope you enjoyed this extra content. Let's get to it. Score number one comes to us from episode 14. I go set mining, and I hit the jackpot on this one. We're in the small blind here. We look down at pocket sixes. A middle position player opens the action to $10. The hijack makes the call, and the button calls, so I call as well, and we're off 4 ways to a flop. The flop is 6-7 ace with 2 diamonds, so I flop bottom set here. I check, and it checks all the way around to the hijack, who bets out for $35. It folds back to me, and I decide to put in the check raise, and I bump the action up to $85. It folds back to the hijack. He's a very competent player named John. I've played with this guy a lot of times. He's counting his chips and moving them around, and then he decides to jam all in for $225 more. I tell him my hand is way too strong to fold, but I ask will it hold, and I make the call. Turn is a jack of spades. The river is a 3 of diamonds. I let out an expletive thinking that he may have gotten there on the river, and I show my hand, and he says we're good, so we scoop a pretty large pot our way. I should have noticed that the ace of diamonds was actually out there, making it way less likely that my opponent was on a flush draw, and probably didn't have to sweat it as hard as I did, but we scoop a really good sized pot in our direction. This punt is from episode 12. In this hand, I overplayed the shit out of king-queen offsuit. When I showed up, the room was absolutely packed. The wait list was over 70 people long, but somehow I glitched my way to the top of it, and it won't take me very long to get involved in hands. Our third hand in, we're in the big blind, and we look down at king-queen offsuit. A middle position player raises to $12. The cutoff calls and the button calls. The small blind folds, and I don't necessarily want to play this hand out of position for that price. I want to try to go ahead and weed out some weaker hands. And so, I put in the 3-bet to $40. Probably should have gone a little bit bigger with so many people in the pot. I get a call from the original raiser, the cutoff, and the button. So, we are off to a flop with a semi-marginal hand out of position 4 ways. Flop is King Jack 6 with 2 diamonds. All things considered, probably a dream flop for me. I want to go ahead and continue putting pressure on, so I lead out for $75. The middle position player then shoves all in. The cutoff folds and the button folds. I didn't get re-raised pre-flop, so I'm not putting him on aces or ace-king, and if he has those, then so be it. I don't think I could get a much better flop for this marginal hand, and I also have a backdoor flush draw, so I make the call. When I call, my opponent asks me if I have aces, and I tell him no. My opponent ends up tabling his hand, and he does in fact have ace-king. I'm a little bit surprised because I didn't face a 4-bet pre-flop, but by not 4-betting, he actually really disguised the strength of his hand. We're off to a turn. The turn is a king of hearts. The river is a 5 of clubs. Afterwards, the player in seat 8 asks if I have a vlog. He says he plays a lot of 2-5, and you don't see that 3-bet very often from the blinds in 1-2. He mentions that he sees it way more at the 2-5 level. So, I'll take that as a compliment. This next score has never been released. This is one of the first videos I made when starting my vlog. I showed it to friends and family to get their input, and it's actually a really great hand. I get put in a tough spot with a premium on the river.
In the game of poker, you're often put in tough situations, and sometimes you just have to trust the math that's involved in certain scenarios. And I found myself in a situation like this, so let me share it with you. I'm in late position, and I look down at pocket aces. It folds around to me, and I make a raise to $15. I get a call from the player on the button, and I get a call from the small blind, who's a very splashy player who could literally have any 2 cards, so we're off 3 ways to a flop. The flop is deuce 4-6 with 2 clubs. I go ahead and lead out for $35. The guy on the button doesn't seem happy about the move. He kind of made a comment that he wanted to lead on the pot, and he was mad I had taken the move from him. And he goes ahead and he makes the call, and the small blind gets out of the way. So now we're going down to a turn heads up. The turn card is a 3rd club. It's another low card. Now puts a really weird straight draw on the board that I'm not too worried about. But there's definitely clubs out there. So I go ahead and decide to slow down, and I check, and my opponent checks behind me. So the river is another 4, so it pairs the board. I go ahead and decide to figure out where I am, and I lead out for $65, and pretty quickly I'm re-raised by the button to $200. It screams obvious flush, especially given the way he kind of commented on wanting to lead out the betting on the flop. That makes me think he was on some sort of club draw. But I have to ask, how did we get here? And so obviously I wasn't too worried about the straight, given that there was a raise pre-flop. So I wasn't worried about a low card straight. The obvious flush is there. So I started looking at the math, and I realized it was going to cost me about another $135 to call to win about $380, which is about 3 to 1 on my pot odds, which means technically, according to the math, I only have to be right 1 out of 4 times to be profitable in the long run. So even if I'm not right this time, as long as I'm right 1 out of every 4 times in this situation, I can be profitable. So after thinking it over a little bit, I go ahead and I toss in a call, and he says good call, and he flips over pocket sevens with the 7 of clubs. So he had 4 to a flush with a middle pair, and he had a straight draw. But it's just one of those situations where sometimes you have to trust the math that's involved in poker in order to make the right play.
Punt alert. This is a disastrous hand from episode 10. Count with me all the mistakes I make along the way.
We're in the big blind when we look down at King-Queen offsuit. The under the gun player bumps the action up to $10, plus 1 calls, the button calls, and the small blind calls as well. This is the perfect position to put a squeeze bet in. There's really no other action except to make the raise, but for whatever reason I don't, and I just end up making the call. There's mistake number 1. We're off to a flop. The flop is King 10-8 with 2 clubs, so I've got a pretty good piece of this. I go ahead and check my action looking for the pre-flop raiser to put out a bet, but he doesn't, and in fact no one does. It checks through, so we're off to the turn. There's mistake number 2. The turn is a 7 of hearts, so it brings a second flush draw on the board. I've got to put in a bet now to protect my hand and build a pot in case I'm ahead, so I put a bet out for $35. Under the gun calls and everyone else folds, so we're off to a river out of position, heads up. The river is an 8 of diamonds. Both flush draws have missed. I do have to be a little bit weary of Jack 9 though. I put out a bet for $65. Under the gun thinks about it, and then he shoves for $214. This is the second time he's done this to one of my bets in the last 5 minutes or so. Jack 9 did get there on the turn, but I didn't get re-raised on the turn, so I'm not going to put him on that. I'm actually getting pretty decent pot odds to call, 149 to win about 390, so I'm getting better than 3 to 1. I hate this spot and really wish I had put the squeeze on pre-flop, but because the math tells me to do so, I go ahead and make the call, and he flips over pocket sevens for the boat. So, to recap what I didn't do right, I should have 3-bet pre-flop, and I should have bet the flop. It's a frustrating situation because I had chances to take control of this hand, and I didn't. Would he fold to a 3-bet pre-flop? Maybe not. Would he call a flop bet? Probably not. It's just a reminder of why I don't like to slow play hands. You give people the chance to catch up for free.
Our final score comes from episode 17, and it features me formulating a good plan and getting a little bit lucky on the river.
All that stuff I said in the intro about tightening up and playing smart, yeah, you can punt that shit in the trash. 5 hands in, we're on the button, and we look down at 10-jack offsuit. There's one limper from early position before an action player in the cutoff raises to $15. I know I'm only on my 5th hand, but this guy has been involved in every pot and really been pushing the action. I make the call, the big blind calls as well, and the early position limper calls, so we're off to a flop 4 ways. The flop is 9-jack-queen with 2 hearts, so I flop middle pair and an open-ended straight draw. It checks to the cutoff, who bets $25. I think that's a pretty good price to continue, so I call, as do the other 2 players. We're still 4 ways to a turn. The turn is a 6 of spades, it doesn't change anything, and the action checks all the way to me here. And I really think there's only one play to make, and that's to make a polarizing size bet, so I shove all in for $157. The big blind who checked then shoves all in for less, about $142. The player in early position then also makes the call for about $105. The only player that doesn't call, the action cutoff. He folds. So, we're off to a river. The big blind goes ahead and shows his hand. He has pocket 9s for the flop set. Early position says he needs a club, so I have a lot of things I have to fade, and very specific cards that I'm looking for here on the river. You can hear in the video me calling for a red 8.
Red 8.
And the river card is not red, it's black. but it's the 8 of spades. I table my hand and I scoop this monster pot.
Our final punt is from an upcoming episode, episode 20. I'm a little tilted from a cooler on the previous hand, and I absolutely self-destruct on the following hand. In the very next hand, we're in +1, and we look down at ace-5 of clubs. It folds to me, and I open the action for $15. There's a call from the button, and then Craig in the big blind raises to $51. Action's back on me. Craig then actually says he thought the guy to my right opened the action and didn't realize it was me.
Oh, that was you. I thought it was this guy's 15.
Oh, it's me.
I looked at that wrong.
I'm a little tilted over how I played that last hand by not 3-betting pre-flop and not raising the river. It should be obvious that he's not going to make this play from the big blind with anything less than jacks, but it's most likely queens or better. I tank for a solid minute thinking about my options. This screams fold. Get out. You're only out $15. I could maybe just call the raise to see a flop to see if I can catch something, but folding is the very obvious action here.
I'm gonna raise.
Wait, what? That's not in the plan. This is a fold. What are you doing?
150.
Oh, The button folds and Craig instantly shoves all in for 247 total. This is exactly what I feared. It's $97 more to win about 400, so I'm getting 4-1 on a call.
Why do I video this stupid game and put it on YouTube for people to watch?
And so for those odds, I have to call. The board runs out and I end up rivering a pair of fives. To what should be no surprise at all, Craig flips over pocket kings and wins the hand. 2.5 hours of what felt like pure dominance to all come crashing down in about 7 minutes. All right, so there you go. Some of my biggest punts and scores from the vlog so far. If you made it all the way to the end, you probably noticed that in episode 20, we got another graphics change coming. Really excited to bring this new look to the channel and to you guys, and really hope you enjoy it. So I'm getting ready to start my draft. I am poised to take Travis Kelce with this next pick and start putting together an awesome team. So we'll see you next time. He drafted Travis Kelce. Man, what the? If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more poker content. And you can follow me on Instagram at 7cardflushpoker.